Hey guys, happy Friday. I love saying happy Friday. That's just that just sounds relaxing, doesn't it?
It does. Like it sounds like there should be like a little drink with a pink umbrella in it that you're handing me right now.
I mean, who
Well, I
doesn't
mean,
like a Friday? Who doesn't
everybody
like a
likes
Friday?
you got it, man. Christy, I mean, it looks like you're on a beach somewhere. What's going on?
I am on a beach somewhere. Well, not physically on the beach, though I'm looking at it right here, down in Georgia, visiting my parents and, hanging out for a day or two, which is always a pleasure. You think about your parents, and I love my sweet parents. They are though obviously being my parents, they're a little older, and you have to think about the number of times that you're actually going to get to spend with them. And so every second, every precious second matters.
Right on. Right on. I had the I we had a great aunt, great aunt, maybe, whatever. We had an old aunt that she passed away in the winter, and she lived down in Kentucky, but she was born and raised as a kid in Detroit. And her kind of last wishes were to have her ashes buried with her mother in this cemetery in Detroit. And so all of her adult kids, very adult kids, are all older than me, my cousins, they live all over the country. So they all came into Detroit a couple weeks ago, and they did this beautiful kind of graveside ceremony for their mom. And my dad wanted to go, and he's been just battling some crazy health stuff. And long story short, about midway through our day, he wasn't feeling well, and we took a precautionary stop at the ER. And like 8 hours later, hanging around in a emergency room getting all the tests that you go through in the battery test. Not exactly the time you want to spend with a parent, but that's part of the trade-off too when we get to this part of our lives.
Like
I remember.
Go ahead, Gibby.
No, go ahead.
I feel so lucky that my parents took such great care of me and did a great job of raising me. We're not going to be Maury Povich, where it's like, everything is bad. No, my parents were great. And, the mistakes I made are my own. Hopefully I've learned from them and I continue to grow. But I feel it's like such an honor and a privilege that we have a relationship and that they're still around. And I get the privilege and the opportunity to even care for them in some way.
That's right. We get to this. I remember texting with you, Brian, when that was going down, and always
Yeah.
always a treat being at a hospital. You never go there for a good reason. But
No.
yeah,
babies. I'm sorry, babies. Can we just say babies?
Oh, yeah.
Babies are a good reason to go to a hospital.
Well, hey, by the way, shout out Adrian Hernandez, Ben Locker, Vice President of Sales. Speaking of babies, he and his wife just welcomed baby number 2 to the Hernandez family. So congratulations, Adrian. He's probably not watching. He's either catching a little bit of sleep or in the middle of newer dad duty. So congrats, Adrian.
Yeah, circle of life. My mother-in-law passed just over 4 years ago of pancreatic cancer. Turned 62 on a Friday, passed on a Sunday. So lost one of 4 grandparents for our 4 kids, and there are other kids in that family. And then, my dad passed about 4.5 years ago. He battled Parkinson's for about 22 years, and I saw a post from Eddie Perez, talking about his father Eduardo, who came over from Cuba and has been his inspiration. It's a really great story, and that happened 18 years ago to the day, and he calls it a live day. He goes, that's when he told his father on his deathbed, hey, I'm gonna serve others. I'm gonna make this life not about me. And I thought that was a really good post by Eddie on LinkedIn. Check that out. And
that's his the American gift, right? Tag. That's all in honor of his father.
That's right. And we talk about the Simon Sinek. What's your why? Eddie has a clear why. And to transition this into work, when you're serving the underserved, especially when the last administration, the CFPB came out and said if you don't help, low AMI borrowers, we're going to come after you. Literally, like their deputy director sitting in a room with all those executives, setting goals and benchmarks for lenders to lend higher than there's actual borrowers in the system to serve. You go out and you serve, and then, quite honestly, you do crappy loans and FHA manual government loans like we do and Eddie does, and now 200 lenders on a credit watch list. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I will say that that when you get on a watch list with HUD, there's a process. It's not like, okay, you're all gone, you're all done, you're all losing your ability to do HUD underwriting. So here's some advice for anyone that's listening that cares to dance in that space. IMBs do the work. It's not banks. They don't do the work. In their defense, the government sued them, using the False Claims Act from the Civil War era for doing the hard loans. So said, screw it. We'll just set up correspondent conduits and buy it from lenders like us to do the hard work. And so, the advice for anyone listening is, if you have to watch your DQ numbers, like the moment they come out, you have to go through them. You have to go through them loan by loan. You have to have policies and procedures in writing of how you review those loans. You need to know down to the loan officer. If you have one loan officer that's way out of balance, you may need to take their ability away, or get them to find, other types of business, or a branch, or even an MSA, which, the bombastic, clickbait, press that's out there, what they said about Eddie Perez is total BS. But there are 4 areas territorially that they're working through issues, and so it's not insurmountable if you're on that list. And I saw the list this morning. There's some pretty big names in there. And all is not lost. You can call your guidelines back if you want. To your point, Christy, we had a great. We were talking pre-show here. I was listening. Carrington does a good job. Nolan Turner, he's been going around for over a year now with tons of data talking about HUD delinquencies, and they're on the rise. And they stepped in where subprime kind of fell out after 2010 Dodd-Frank. Non-QM is in there, but if you want to do a full doc tough loan and you want to help someone get the American dream and they're low and AMI bar, area media income bar, you're gonna have some bad loans. I always joke I have the Ginny DQs to prove that we're doing the tough work. But you can get an early buyout facility through a company like Carrington. You can have those bought off of your list and taken out of your numbers to reduce your numbers. And you just have to show HUD that you have a plan and you're working on it, and it's not a surprise to you or to them. And so I know, Eddie and EPM, I know they're all over it. And there's some lenders on there, I don't know if they're all over it. You see some of these smaller correspondents, they may not have the ability to turn on the faucet and take in a bunch of streamlined refis to offset some of their numbers, or take in more cleaner FHA business quickly. If you have a wholesale channel, you can call that back, you could shut it down, so, again, it's not insurmountable. It's not a death list. It's a warning. And it's just a sign of the market we're in. The last 3 years have been a brutally slow grind where people don't just go out of business overnight. They're grinding through tough loans. And it's nice to get this little uptick in refinance business to fill our revenue coffers, turn the faucet on, and help work through, HUD credit watch list.
Well, what's interesting that you talk about that is the watch list is a numerator and a denominator problem. And if you only have a few loans in there and you have a couple that go delinquent, it can put your numbers out of whack pretty quickly. It's also a solid reminder that this business is extremely complicated. And there are lots and lots of moving parts that you have to be aware of and you have to educate yourself on. So I'm going to give a little plug for being a CMB here. But it's one of the things that you really learn as a CMB because you learn all facets of the business. And it's important to know and understand that because the one thing you do over here is going to have an impact over there. And you have to be able to manage to all of that in order to have a truly viable company.
Yeah, Christy, before we went live and KP was just coming on, we were talking about kind of market averages and sometimes getting lost in the big average number, right? And not
Right.
zeroing in. In our discussion, we were talking about some market dynamics, but I think the same applies for what KP is describing around, the performance numbers in particular on an FHA book. And, I remember our days together at Flagstar, Christy. We had some tough meetings as business
Good.
operators around decisions that had to be made based on some early signals and signs that we were seeing in data, right? And some of those hardest decisions.
Really interesting. That's actually a really interesting discussion, and using that, because you and I went through that together. And one of the things that we found was, one, our data wasn't in the place that we always had hoped it was. It wasn't as easy to
Right.
pull data and say, well, was this the cause or that the cause? There was a lot of guessing or hypothesizing, if you will. And then we'd have to go back and spend a week looking at data to try to figure it out. And hopefully people have their data in a better place. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. It underscores the importance of being able to access your data and make actual decisions based on the true facts. Because as you and I found out, when we had some of those hypotheses weren't in fact true. And if we had pulled those levers, we wouldn't have had the results that we wanted to have. It would have been a plan that we could have given, but it wouldn't have had the impact and the results that we wanted. And thankfully we had, not only our team, but the team around us that cared enough to do that amount of research. Today, how, this kind of transitions into a little of what KP and I were talking about, when we saw each other this week, that the business is shifting and moving, and data is just one way that we have to look at it. I mean, the other is, how are you using technology to impact that? So I think that goes back to this discussion. Had we had an artificial intelligent analyst that we could have gone back to and said, hey, can you work on this while we think about it? Maybe we could have made that decision in a few days instead of what took us almost 2 months to keep going back and forth with that hypothesis. And so the implementation of technology really has actual real world impacts on your business and how you operate.
Well, you brought up the numerator and denominator. And as you drill down even to the LO level, I mean, you may find one LO that sent 10 HUD loans, and 6 of them are DQ, delinquent. And so you can start to play with that math if you drill down further and further. And it may be easier to fix than you think. You're like, hey, dude, in Atlanta, you're just doing a ton of really bad loans. Like we gotta work on this. Like, we can't let you continue. So it is a math equation, and you can drill all the way down. And so it's obviously a little harder when you have a wholesale channel. You have to think about your guidelines. So our stated guidelines in wholesale have a higher credit score than our retail channel, and so we get more clean business in a higher volume channel to offset the overall book for us. And that's been the way we've always managed it. And so when you look at some of the larger wholesale lenders, they don't do tough, low FICO, high propensity to be delinquent FHA loans. Whereas, people want to poo-poo the retail channel, but our retail channel just has flat out better guidelines. We're doing raw manual underwrites, and we're getting a lot of tough loans done, being offset by the bigger, greater book of a correspondent and a wholesale channel. And so there is some benefits to being a multi-channel lender. And so it's everyone's got to find and strike that balance.
This is also like, I was going to just add, Christy and KP, that for our audience that perhaps is made up of originators and or brokers, or originators that sell to an aggregator, right, or deliver to a wholesaler like PRMG. What you're hearing, guys, is why we, and I say we because I spent a lot of my career on the TPO side, we look for a relationship where there's a fair representation of your overall book of business that we're receiving as that aggregator, as that wholesale lender. If we're only getting the tough deals and that's not representative of your overall book of business, that's not good for us. And for all the reasons we've already talked about, And so that's where we're going to have tough conversations at that relationship level. And so, I think it's important that at the street level, and this goes for a retail loan officer too, right? They don't necessarily have choice on delivering outside of corporate or the company, if you will, but they do have to think about, a better representation of the market that they serve. So while they're tough conversations, I think when those expectations are made up front at the onset of those relationships, it makes it easier to have those on an ongoing basis. And KP, to your point, if we have this data, we should be super transparent back to our partners so that they see it is almost in real time and the same way we're seeing it. Then there's not going to be any kind of surprise when a conversation has to happen.
Well, I think having the dashboards and looking at them and then having the conversation about what really matters in the business, that it's not, I can remember in the business years ago, and this is way years ago prior to the great financial crisis, where loan officers and others said, well, as long as I can sell the loan, it must be a good loan, as opposed to really being critical of each loan and saying, is this the right thing for the borrower, first of all? And then is it the right thing for the system? Like, are we creating downstream problems? And just because you can sell a loan to the borrower, because you can sell it to an aggregator or to Fannie Freddie, is that the right choice? And we all have a fiduciary responsibility to determining and deciding which loans actually get made in the system.
And what I'll say is, lenders who are in wholesale, it's up to us to have these conversations with, brokers and say, hey, you got to help us work with this, whether it's a repurchase or early payoff or early payment default. We need you to work with us so we can continue to have a relationship. And, I would say most originators out there have the right mindset. You come across some though that are like, well, you underwrote the loan, not my problem. And to be fair, that's also a self-defense mechanism because, if you're a broker, you don't have the money for a repurchase. You just don't have any money. And so, I'm talking about the bulk of brokers out there who are smaller. And so you want to work with a lender that's going to work with you. I mean, we don't make brokers repurchase loans. We work through, scratch and dent, and we say, all right, here's the cost for this, give us a couple more loans a month than you normally do to help offset it. And we'll call it a day. I mean, that's kind of the partner I think you want to look for. In our retail channel, we just work with them. I mean, they're part of us. And, and of course we take responsibility having underwritten it. But I'll say what I've always said. The secondary market is cold, heartless, and unforgiving. They don't care. They don't care who underwrote it. They don't care why it went default. They don't care why it's bad. It's bad. You buy it back. You eat it. You pay the EPO. You pay the EPD. There are no breaks. Again, it's cold and heartless and unforgiving in the secondary market.
Well, it kind of has to, right? It's a market. It's not. Absolutely. It's not a counseling center.
Yeah, I was scouring through that list this morning, and but one of the names jumped out at me. Axia Home Loans. They try to build a wholesale team, and of course they're trying to make a name for themselves. So they probably took on some loans that were tough. So if you're like a younger lender trying to learn wholesale, and you bring in someone who's an expert in their team, and they dump a bunch of bad loans on you, you can see what happens. They're out of business. But there's some people on that list who who are probably teetering, but thank God rates are low. The market's good. There's a little boom, out there for refinance business right now, which is great for profitability. Everyone that's been setting up our systems to take in more business, now that system is rocking, and you turn the faucet on when it's time to go, and you help offset these things. We go in these waves. I mean, fortunately, these credit watch letters went out right now while everyone's got an influx of business. You could lower your FHA pricing on some of your easier stuff to take in more good FHA business to offset your book on your DQ numbers that are bad. And so rates are low. PCE came in at expectation. The month-over-month number was actually lower on the core than the prior month, which is great. So now we look forward to Jobs Week and next Friday's Fake Friday jobs report that'll get revised next year down, I'm sure, by like 100,000 jobs. But that's the next peg in this rate parlor game that we play as we bounce from data to data. If that jobs report is weak or the revisions for July and August, final revision for July, are also weak. Remember, June was outright negative jobs created. So, will July or August be revised down? And will the headline number for October come in weak? If any combination of those things happen, you could see rates pierce back down towards that 4%, the perfect GPO 4.0 level, and maybe even pierce through it, depending on how weak it is. And we could have even more locks. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like we're seeing just 50 to 60% lock volume up month over month. And I warned I walked by our post-closing team. God bless those people. They're so amazing. I'm like, hey, I don't know if anyone's told you, but our locks are up like a ton. So next month's going to be busy,
The wave.
And then I was like, hey, we'll get you lunch. And then one of the guys is like talking to this one lady who doesn't come in, and he's like, you're going to need to come in to the office more next month instead of work from home. And they all just start laughing. So they got good spirits. It's a good problem to have. We've got job security. We get to do this, and let's make hay while the sun shines.
Well, I think this is another point to talk about the technology, right? For those lenders that took this slower time and implemented technology that allow their people to be more efficient and effective, they're better set up to wave in some of that volume and still create positive borrower experiences. And so the work that we do through the ups and down cycles really matter in how we get to deliver when things get super busy.
Thank you, Alan, for the comments, and I know that is and Deborah. Alan put on there. This is the kind of C-level perspective that makes these calls so valuable. That's the main reason I'm on LinkedIn. I just do 2 videos a week, and there's only a few shareholders and owners of lenders to get out there and put themselves out there and talk about this stuff. And this stuff does matter, and we want to know about it. I was on an owner-operator call Tuesday morning with the Mortgage Collaborative, and just talking about the challenges that we all face in all these different areas. And that's why we have the last word. That's why I do LinkedIn. That's why Brian puts himself out there more than anyone on LinkedIn with great content, because we want to share what we see, because there's an abundance of business out there. There's no secret. I have a group of Lenders One executives that they said they put a snapshot of that watch list this morning. What do you guys think? And we've got some great people on there helping each other and adding perspective. And we need more lenders. We need more people sharing. Gosh, I got a great tip at that Zactus Customer Advisory Board. Regarding soft pulls and how to work through and navigate. With Zactus, and how Zactus is helping us navigate through all these credit cost increases. And so, the 3 of us are on the road. We're road warriors. We're out there. We're gaining insights, and then we come on the show and we freely share it. And it's Friday afternoon, so we've got the tough spot. We're coming in with bases loaded, 1 out in the bottom of the 9th. Up by 1 run. We got to close the week out every week, but we're throwing heat over here.
Baseball analogies are tough right now. If you're a Detroiter, if you want to track like an epic meltdown, pull up the Major League Baseball standings and go look at like July 15th. Detroit was 15 and a half games up in their division, and pretty much we were all talking big about number 1 seed, avoid the wild card, blah 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 blah. Well, we are now dead even with the Cleveland Guardians, formerly known as Indians, and we have to win. We have to win like at least 2 out of 3 of our remaining games just to make the playoffs. So this stuff.
Don't even go there. My Rangers were 2 games out, 2 weeks ago, and they lost 6 straight. So Poly Market has them 0 chance. And I agree, Deborah. It does take all of us. Which, by the way, if anyone watched the Cardinals hosting the Seahawks last night, I just turned it on for like the last 2 minutes, which was exciting. I got to ask Greg Scher if he stole all of us. Their end zone says it takes all of us.
Yeah.
So I was like, I was like, where did he get that? You know, but yeah,
Greg's
it is
a smart guy, but
yeah. Well,
But there's
I mean,
nothing
look,
wrong with recycling content, KP. Like,
no,
it's something they
we
teach you in the marketing
we
department.
no, we have a saying that says progress is not possible without change, and I'm a change agent. Like some people never change, and I'm always constantly trying to change our platform for the better. And our our marketing team, Paul Aceto, they put progress is not possible without change, and someone called them out and they go, "Isn't that a Gandhi quote?" And I looked it up, and I'm like, "Oh shit, yeah, we stole it from Gandhi." And then Paul's like, "Oh, I don't know where I got it from. I heard it from somewhere." I'm like, "Yeah." But whatever, we're not above finding the good stuff and repurposing it.
Swipe and adapt. Like it's a function, and it's what I hope that people get. And we're hearing it in the comments today that people get from these conversations. And it's one of the things I really love about our industry is that we don't, as the kids say, gatekeep. We're happy to share all the information, and hopefully somebody can put it to use. The differentiator for each of us is how we use the same information and how we do the thing, and that is unique to you, and you have the opportunity to do that. But we have the ability to share what's working. And to your point on the advisory board and going through some of the data and just the commentary, we all benefit from conversations like this, conversations that we have via text message. To your point, the passing around of the list this morning, and just talking about like how do we take this into our business and make our business better. And then if you're a broker sitting on here, you know that you're not making the underwriting decisions and you're not making the call on what the credit score is. You have to work with your aggregators and the people that you sell your loans to. Well, now you can be proactive and go to your partners and talk with them about the situation, see where they are on the list, see how you could help them. What are ways that you can be a good partner as well? And it's great for brokers to be proactive.
And we're sitting here with our MISMO president, Brian View,
Soon to be.
incoming. Yeah. Well, but you're spreading the word of, the love language, the data language of mortgage tech and fintech. And so it's very important. People probably didn't know it was a standard, data set and what that means. As we all talk about data as the new oil, and now we're refining that oil and we're actually using it, for AI and a multitude of uses. How do you make it more streamlined? And Brian incoming is going to get the word out on that. And so it's a very powerful host of the last word to have that. And to your point, share this information with the industry and anyone that's willing to listen to us.
Hey guys, a minute and a half left. We've got another, little bit of a crisis to avoid with a potential of a government slowdown or shutdown. What should at the street level, should LOs be concerned or thinking about the impact to a potential shutdown? And if so, what's one or two things they could be doing to prepare ahead of next Tuesday, Wednesday?
Well, the irony is this: the stock market could sell off a little bit and money flow into bonds, and rates actually get better as a flight to safety. Right. We've seen a government shutdown before last about 30 days in the Trump 1 administration, and past his prologue a little bit. The Democrats are in the minority, but it requires 60 votes in the Senate for the continuing resolution to pass. And so they're making demands that they didn't get in the one big beautiful bill. And so the reality is, as usual, the party that's in the minority, it's, every time there's a government shutdown, it's always on them. And so in this moment in time, it's on the Democrats, and they're saying we want, Medicaid, Medicare, taxes, tax credits, and they want something thrown in the budget. They want to use the power as the minority in the Senate to get something that they did not get because they did not win an election a year ago. And so they'll ultimately take the blame, just like, the Republicans took some blame when they did this. And it's a no-win situation. So in the business, it's order your flood insurance now. If you have a property in a flood zone, order it now. Order it now. Like, you might be able to order it by Tuesday. And we might not get our BLS Friday jobs report next week if everyone's furloughed. And so, and you also might get an announcement today that all the job cuts in the CFPB will get done today. So they're not on the payroll on October 1st and then still have to get paid. And then, because everyone gets back pay, even if they're not working and there's a shutdown. So they all still get paid for not having to work. So it's a furlough. And so, yeah, I would order, I would order flood insurance. That's probably the biggest thing that would impact the way we operate.
Well, I think this is an opportunity to communicate, right? So if you think about your business at the level, you were on the call today. So now you know you need to be a little bit more proactive. Call every borrower that has a USDA loan. Call every borrower who might need flood insurance. Reach out and educate folks. Take this as an opportunity to, a lot of broker meetings are on Tuesday mornings. So schedule some time to go and be with your real estate partners and do your research over the weekend. You could even use ChatGPT. Just make sure it's not hallucinating, but use the tools and use this as an opportunity to go educate not only your borrowers, but your referral partners about what it means, where things are going to continue to flow smoothly and where things are going to likely create hiccups. And if you do that in advance, you become the partner of choice.
Love it. Well, guys, these calls, these shows fly by. I don't know if you realize it, but we just completed the Q3's version of The Last Word. So when we reconvene next year, we will be in Q4. So
and we miss Courtney. We hope we get her back next Friday.
We will have Courtney back for sure. Well, always enjoy this. Learn from you guys every week, every time we do this. I appreciate everything. To the audience, we love the engagement, love the interaction. If there's things you want to hear about in upcoming shows, drop them in the comments and we'll make sure we weave those into the conversation. Until then, this is a Chrisman commentary marketplace show, The Last Word, and we'll be back here next Friday. See you guys.
Yeah.
See ya.